The Healing Foundation acknowledges country, custodians, and community of the lands on which we live and work. We also pay our respects to elders and to stolen generation survivors of the dreaming and of the here and now. We recognise the ongoing nature of trauma experiences for First Nations peoples and commit each day to survivor-led intergenerational healing.
Sister, do you have any advice for people who are looking to apply, and especially advice not only for the mob that are wanting to apply, but for those support people like yourself as well?
So I guess first off is especially for the support people of the survivor and the applicant, is to ensure that when they do receive their file and they do receive their story, that there is a therapeutic plan in place, because not only for the survivor, but also for the support or the descendant or whoever's supporting the person going through the application, there's going to be things that are going to come up, and it's going to be very disturbing. I know, and like I said previously, I know my mum got her file before any of this stuff came about, because she wanted to go on a healing journey for herself. So me and my sister and my mum went on her stolen generation healing, and we went on our intergenerational trauma healing. So we've been on that journey now for 5 years, going deep into breaking the cycle of that. So it's important that people understand that they're going to hear some things about their mother or their father or their nan or whoever that they never knew. So then it can make people go either ways. It can either make people really angry for a certain amount of time after reading it. It can do different things to different people, and we know that, you know, trauma comes out differently. So I guess that would be the big point, is to just make sure that there's that therapeutic support in place. And I guess for some, and I know through Mum's experience with supporting other nans and stuff through this process, I know that some of them don't even have a file. So what information can they provide to the redress scheme? Because they know what deep down, because they've suppressed this information, they've suppressed it. So they can only think about certain things that have come up, you know, which may only be some information if they don't have the documentation, if you know what I mean. So it's important to be, you're basically opening a can of trauma. You're opening, and this trauma is not only going to affect the person, but it's going to affect the descendants as well. And I know that firsthand.
Would you say, sister, that finding the correct and, I suppose, culturally safe organisations to take on this journey with you is really, really important?
Yes, I do. Because I know that my mum had another compensation claim through in Adelaide when she was taken away in Adelaide, and I know I questioned. I nearly called them once because I was like, what's going on? Because, you know, she had given her story, and this was her first compensation claim. So she had given her story, and there was things that were a bit wishy-washy, because they were like, we're paying you in this month, you know what I mean? And then I said to Mum, well, how much are you actually getting? You know, and then she's like, well, I'm getting this much, but then, you know, they've got to take administration fees out of it, and they've got to do this and they've got to do that. So that didn't sit well with me at the start, because I was like, that doesn't sound right, you know. But, you know, our mob are so forgiving. They're like, don't worry about it. It's okay. But in my mind, I was like, no, you have to ensure that they're just not trying to rip you off, basically. And they're not just doing it for their own gain. Because if they're doing it for their own gain, that's not right, because they're opening a can of worms up, a whole trauma that's been suppressed, and they don't understand what that process is actually like. So you got to be careful. That's what I'm saying, is you have to be careful, and you have to just ensure that it is culturally safe.
Would you suggest as well, I suppose, when that trauma and the everything that she or anyone suppressed with the information that they're holding so deep inside them, do you think the process of applying for the redress scheme needs to come with, like, I suppose, a counselling service that is, I suppose, not qualified, but is really ingrained in understanding of this whole process and of the intergenerational trauma and the trauma that mum has had? Is that a huge part? Like, I suppose, she's not only telling people a story, it's her life story, and it's not just like anybody's life story. This is stories that nobody should ever have to go through. But I think that's what I'm trying to get out in terms of like that counselling. It's not a process where it goes, you go in there, you just tell them your story and you get your money. That's not it. It has to be a journey, and it has to be a process that holistic approach and that holistic support is needed, isn't it?
Yeah, and you're right in saying that. I think there needs to be, and that's why you have to be careful in who you actually, there's lots of compensation claims going around now, but there has to be that support around that person, because not only support for, and it was just lucky that me and my sister, we have our own ways of dealing with intergenerational trauma, but how about if people out there don't?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I suppose sometimes bringing that up with family as well might be quite hard because of her not wanting you to have to deal with that. So to have somebody there that is consistent and that doesn't know you and that you're happy and you feel comfortable with is quite important too, isn't it?
Definitely. And it has to be, I mean, you can speak to a counsellor over the phone, and I know that mum got that support if she needed it with her first compensation claim, but it has to be face to face, you know what I mean? It has to be in a therapeutic, comfortable setting, so it's important that is linked to when dealing with the redress scheme, what compensation, whatever, because it's important, because that's what's going to happen.
100%.
Yeah. When I spoke to mum yesterday, I reminded her again, I was like, I'm going to do this podcast, and she started crying because she said, for so long, we've been quiet about what's happened because they were ridiculed. They weren't allowed to speak about their story. It was forbidden to ever say anything about what had happened. And now it empowers me to be able to use my voice, and in speaking with you today too, in sharing my mom's story, because this is what happened. And this didn't happen generations like way back then, because people don't understand, it's like, that was my mom.
Yeah.
And I know that she said, it's not about the money. It's about getting our identity back, and it's about knowing our story and working through that and healing that, some old people to this day have died with broken hearts, not actually knowing what had happened and what happened behind the scenes and all of this type of stuff, not being able to return back to country and to actually be with family. Some people aren't fortunate enough to do that, and that's a huge part of your identity. And I know that for my own self, because I know that I also I'm a team lead a youth engagement program in Broome, and my family's from the Kimberley region, and I've been on this, like I've said, I've been on this intergenerational journey. So this year I actually went on my own journey of intergenerational healing and went back to my grandmother's country. And I know I was at the cemetery, and it was my great grandfather's grave, like this big huge headstone. And I just sat there and I cried. And then this big busload of tourists rocked up, and then they came to me and they're like, oh, can you tell me your story? And I was like, this is my great-grandfather. This is what happened. This is da-da-da-da. And this old man, a non-Indigenous guy, he was just crying. He's like,
Yeah.
I don't realize it was this close. And I'm like, yes.
Wow.
You know, so, and it is about, like Mum said, not about the money, about identity. And it's not only identity for the applicant, it's identity for the descendants as well. Because now I can actually say with my grandmother's bloodline, without conviction, I'm a proud Jaru woman. Before, I was hurt because I hadn't actually gone back to country and gone back and met family. But now I'm like, this is who I am. So that was the, you know, we're going to heal for the rest of our lives in certain ways. But for me, that was the grounding point that I needed for my own journey.
Amazing. So wow, you've inspired me. I just love it, sister, and I'm so grateful for you and, you know, for your mum, that you guys have been able to go through this process and start that healing journey. And I thank you so much for yarning to me today. Give your mum a big kiss and tell her I said hello, and yeah, we'll talk again soon. Thank you so much.
It's okay. Thank you.
If you or someone you know may need support or someone to talk to, you can call Lifeline Australia on 131114 or Beyond Blue on 1300 22 4636. Or head to www.healingfoundation.org.au/support for more information.